Welcome to This is Concrete, a podcast where we speak with the people whose work revolves around concrete and coatings. Let's get to what you came for.
Hello, Chad Gill here. I am the host of the This is Concrete podcast, where I talk with leaders in facilities management, architecture, contracting, and more. This episode is brought to you by Concrete. Concrete is a concrete polishing and coatings company with nearly 20 years of experience in commercial, industrial, and residential markets. So whether you need smooth transitions for warehouse traffic or a show-stopping lobby floor, we have the ability and the skills you need to make your concrete uncommon. So what are you waiting for? Visit us at thisisconcrete.com today. We're also sponsored by Workforce Recon. Recon is a project tracking software that connects the office to the field crews. Field Recon is built with a field-first mentality, developed by contractors for contractors. It includes time and asset tracking, messaging, and job documentation, along with scheduling in one place so you can see what's going on. So if you're tired of finding out days later what happened, check us out at workforcerecon.com. See your operation in real time. So joining me today is Jerry Green, a San Diego native who has made a lasting impact on the concrete industry. From witnessing the surge of decorative concrete in the 80s to founding his own company in 1992, Jerry's journey reflects innovation, determination, and mentorship. With experience as an estimator, a project manager, and a sales rep, he's left his mark on projects ranging from intimate patios to around landmarks like SeaWorld and Petco Park. Jerry, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
I think last time we spoke, you were headed to the Colorado River to get hotter, in fact.
Yes, I was. Yeah, kind of a crazy thing we do. We leave nice, beautiful, temperate San Diego weather and head out east to the Colorado River, where temperatures are usually 20 or 30 or 40 degrees higher. And, we go out there and bake in the sun and have have a few cold ones with some good friends. And
That's right. That's it. I always joke with, I've spent a limited amount of time, like maybe a few months at a shot in San Diego. And I was like, I don't feel like the weather ever changed. I mean, you guys should have an AI weatherman and be moving on.
except we had a hurricane here yesterday. I don't know if you heard about that.
I did. And I was like, I must be misreading this. I didn't even know you could have a hurricane on the West Coast.
I've lived here my entire life, and I've never seen anything like it. We had I guess they called it a tropical storm. It started out as a hurricane out over the Pacific, and came in and it dumped a fair amount of rain on us. And in August, I think they said that happened once in like the 1800s or something. But we've never seen weather like that around here this time of year. It was interesting. A lot of people were nervous about it, as you can imagine. We're not we're a town that sees maybe 10 inches of rain every year, and we got like 3 or 4 or 5 in 24 hours. So yeah, people were a little worked up about that. But,
yeah, your hurricane would be our earthquake. We wouldn't know what. Like, what?
Yeah, earthquakes are nothing around here.
I mean, a couple of days ahead of that hurricane, I'm assuming nobody even went to work. Everybody was probably out trying to catch waves.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Best surf in like 20 years. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. So I want to talk to you because you've been an estimator, you've been a project manager and a sales rep. So what I want to ask you about is how you move a project from estimating to the field. And, a lot of people, I think, struggle with that is how much time and effort can you afford to spend, and how much can you afford not to spend to move one from what I promised to do to being able to fulfill it? What I call, I joke about it and say I'm in promise making and my ops manager is in promise fulfillment, and I feel bad for him. But, right. I should at least give him some idea of what I promised. How do y'all handle that?
Right. Well, that's a great question. And it's a question that, we've been dealing with for a long time here, and in the early days, we didn't do a lot of planning when it came to getting a project. Once the celebration was over, we got the contract. It's like, okay, let's go do the work. Everybody gets excited, and we, get our crew together and we send them out to the job, and then we figure out what we need from there. And kind of not the greatest way to run a business. So we found out pretty quickly that doesn't work. So so we have some processes in place that we put in place over the years that really help us do exactly that. We've got the job, now what? You got the contract, now what? And, hopefully you've read through the contract, all of the requirements, the scope meets the contract, what's expected of you, the customer's expectations, the client's expectations. Most of what we do is commercial work. We're working mainly with general contractors, and being in that position puts you a little bit of a disadvantage because you're removed from the customer, you're removed from the end user. And so really knowing what that customer, that end user's expectation is difficult. You're usually presented with a set of plans, a set of specs, and a contract and a schedule. And so you're, in your mind, you think, well, if you can meet those things, then, you're in pretty good shape. But as we know, that's not always the case. Then you have
all that tells you is what the architect asked for. It has nothing to do with what the owner wanted.
Exactly. So it takes some effort to try to get to that point. And what are we trying to accomplish here? What's the goal? What's the custom? Is it just we need to get this job open, by this particular date, come hell or high water, and that's what we've got to focus on? Or is this maybe this project is a landmark project for this customer and everything's got to be perfect and they're not so much concerned about the time element? So it's really, really important to try to find out those aspects of the job before you even step foot on the job. So doing that upfront work really does pay off, because you don't want to go into a project with one set of expectations and find out that, the owner has a different set of expectations at the end of the day. So we try to spend some time up front figuring that out. It takes a lot of communication with the customer. We'll try to have as many site meetings with the contractor and try to ask those questions even before we bid the job. A lot of times we sort of have a questionnaire we go through, and we try to find out if we're even a good fit to bid on that project. Do we and we ask questions like, what's important to the customer? What are they looking for? Is this a price only kind of thing? Or are they really just at the end of the day gonna pick the cheapest guy? Is the budget the biggest concern of this job? Maybe if that's the case, maybe we don't even want to, look at this job.
Or do you find that general contract, will they tell you that? Do they give you that answer?
It depends. Yeah, the answer is it depends. I'd say most of the time, yes. Most of the time, and you'll get some resistance once in a while. They'll send you the bid invitation. And now a lot of these guys we already know. We've got relationships with them. We know they're a good customer. We know how they work. They know how we work. So there's really no need to kind of go through too much up front. But if it's a new customer, if it's a new somebody we haven't worked for before, absolutely. We're gonna spend a lot of time and money and resources putting together an estimate. We could be talking, dozens, if not hundreds of hours putting together a bid for a customer. So we got to make sure that, we're a good fit for them and they're a good fit for us. And we're not wasting our time and resources or their time and resources, frankly. So we'll push for a phone conversation, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and we'll have a list of questions that we go through with them. And hey, what is the schedule on this job? What phase are you, what stage are you in? Are you guys bidding this job? Do you have this job? Who's the customer? What's the customer? What's their expectation? When's what is most important to you, and who's the decision maker? There's nothing more frustrating for a subcontractor to go through a bid process with the general contractor's estimator, and then he hands it over to a project manager who doesn't know you from Adam. And all of a sudden, you're back at square one. So it's important to find out who's the decision maker, and how do we get to talk to that person and find out what they're going to base their decision on. So we try to get many of those questions answered up front as we can.
And I think people get resistant to that because you're like, well, if I tell you that it's price determinant, then you're just, does that mean you're going to do lower quality? And I think that's a misconception. And it changes what you're offering, because you may say, hey, this is a price-driven thing. So this is a customer that might be interested in a engineered solution that would be less expensive, but may not be something that I'm, are we building this because it needs to last 10 years, or does it just need to get 2 years because your financing is built differently? I mean, there's different reasons behind that can change the way you would bid it.
Yeah, very, very much so. Very much so. And yeah, every project is different. So you never assume that just because you bid one project one way, it's going to, even if it's for the same customer, they could have very different goals and requirements on that next job. So yeah, it's very important to find out going in what those are. And that way, yeah, you can deliver an estimate that meets the parameters of the project, and that's going to save a lot of headaches down the road, and probably a lot of arguments down the road as well.
Right. And probably some lawsuits, which is what we
and
know.
Some lawsuits. That's important too.
So once you get it, and once you get it, and then people feel like, sometimes guys are, man, that's the hard part done. Well, of course, every salesman feels like that's the hard part. That's not the hard part.
Right.
It's the next part, the conveyance of it to your team. What does that look like for you, and lessons learned have you pulled from that?
Yeah, definitely. Once you find out, once you know those expectations, you have to convey that to your team. So what we do is once we're awarded a job and we've gone through the contract and we know this is a real job, we'll sit down and we'll have what we call a handoff meeting, where we hand off the project from estimating over to project management. And now this is project management's opportunity to learn about the project, learn what it's all about. And it's estimating's opportunity to convey all those expectations and the way that they actually bid the job. It's like, hey, did I bid this using, did we figure one pump for this, two pumps for this, how many move-ons, or is this thing, did we realize this thing is going to be, piecemealed or cut up, or were we figuring, hey, we're going to get in there and, bust all this out in one shot? So this is the opportunity for everybody to kind of get on the same page and understand what the parameters of the job is, understand the schedule. Depending on the size of the job, we'll even bring in our foreman at that point, and we'll have him involved in the process. But it's the main goal of that meeting is to hand the job off, estimating, saying, hey, look, we did our job, we estimated the job, and we put everything together for you. Here it is, and now you have something you can take over and start dealing with the client on and making this into a real project. And so, in that meeting, we'll spend anywhere from a half hour to 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes, depending on the size of the job. And if we have brought in our foreman for that meeting, a lot of times we'll do a second meeting where we'll bring in our foreman, and now it's the project managers going over with production. So we'll bring in the superintendent and the foreman, sit them down, and now the project managers kind of having a chance to understand the job. And a lot of times we'll bring in the estimator again, and now we'll explain it to the guys that are actually going to be performing the work. And we'll give them the time. And again, we'll take as much time as, if they've got to sit in the office for 3 days and study this job before we even step foot on the job, so be it. We want them to understand the job. We want them to understand the budgets that were developed for them. We want them to develop the materials, the equipment, everything that we've put into the job. We want them to have a thorough understanding so that there's no surprises when they get to the job, and they can hit the ground running. We'll actually have them buy out the job, all the materials, order the equipment, whatever they're going to need. Any long lead time items, especially, we'll make sure that those are accounted for. So again, we don't want to be, we want to be the ones pushing the schedule when we're on the job. We never want to be in the situation of holding up the schedule. So that's, and that's normally how it works. In concrete, you make money when you're pouring concrete.
Yeah.
So anything you can do to get to that end is gonna make you money. So the more organized you can be, the more proactive you can be, the better you are. Now we'll actually do. I know you did a segment on pole planning not too long ago with a project manager from, I think it was Jordan.
Yep, Debbie and Jordan.
Yeah, and we'll actually bring in our guys, our foremen, and we'll do pole planning with them on projects. Same thing, we'll work backwards from the end date. And, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage because we're doing it in-house. We're kind of looking at our needs. It'd be nice to have some of the other trades involved. But it's something a lot of our general contractors, I wish they all did pole planning. It would be so beneficial. We've gone through it with several, but some of them just don't have any concept of what that is or what it means. And what I always tell my people is, and this is something that we've learned, is that in our business, if you ask somebody who's your customer, if you ask anybody, if you ask any subcontractor, they're, who's your customer? They're going to say, well, your customer is the general contractor, or it's the owner, or it's the architect, or who. And the answer is none of those. Your customer is the guy that comes after you.
Oh yeah.
Right. So if you're pouring, footings for a masonry wall, your customer is the mason. Because
you're talking to a polisher. I mean, if you're placing concrete,
if you're pouring for
often I'm your worst nightmare and your customer.
Exactly. You're exactly right. So I've tried to ingrain that in our guys is, look, guys, our customer is the guy that comes behind us, because if we don't do our job right, they can't do their job right. And it just dominoes down the whole line. So we really do emphasize that to our people. Let's try to communicate with the people that not only come, in front of us, because those people are important too. But we have to coordinate with the landscapers who have sleeves to put in. We have to coordinate with the plumbers who have pipes to put in, electric. We've got a lot of coordination to do. Those are the people we need to spend the most attention to. We get kind of focused on our own schedule and our own tasks, what we need to do, but we can't forget about those other people as well. So again, that comes into planning. And if you don't take the time in the front end, if you don't take the time to sit down and think about these things and allow your people the opportunity to involve these other people, you're really setting yourself up for failure. So to answer your question, you can't really afford not to do the planning, in my opinion. And even if it costs you a whole week with your foreman being non-productive, or what seems to be non-productive in the office, staring at plans, it's going to make productivity faster. It's going to make fewer mistakes. You're going to have less guys standing around waiting for something to happen. The whole process is going to go smoother, and in the end, you're going to have a happier customer, I believe.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Better for him to spend 10 hours staring at. He's going to stare at plans for 10 hours somewhere. Better to be in the office without 4 other guys watching him.
Exactly.
So, kind of a weird question. I mean, it sounds like a dumb question, but when do you have that meeting? Because you may get a contract for a job that won't start for another 18 months.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's a great question. We struggle with that sometimes too. And so we do try to have it as close to the project starting as possible, but not too close, because you got to give yourself time. But you're right. If you just get a contract now and the job's not going to start for 18 months, you don't want to do your planning now. You'll forget about your plan by the time the project's ready to go, or the people you'd planned it with, maybe they're on to another project, or maybe they're not even with their company anymore.
Yeah.
Who knows? Things change.
You want to you want a fresh estimator in your memory, but I can't rely on it sticking in somebody else's head.
No, you can't. And even the estimating though, if you did your estimating right and you documented everything, that should be fairly easy to, okay, yeah, this is how we figure things. And we do that. We do a pretty good job of documenting everything in our estimating process. But no, you're right. And so typically it might be, we're doing a handoff meeting tomorrow morning for a project that's going to start this week. Now that's unusual. It's a small project, but this job just kind of popped up last minute. And that's the hardest thing is, you have a customer that might say, yeah, I need you next week. I need you guys out here next week. Can you start Wednesday? Well, you say, well, yeah, I got the guys available. I can start Wednesday, but I have a process I have to follow. I got to bring my people in and have a meeting. And we got to sit down and figure this thing out and make sure we're organized. The customer doesn't understand that a lot of times. You have to explain it to them. It's like, I want to start your job Wednesday. I'd love to start your job Wednesday. But if I start your job Wednesday, I'm not going to be productive. You're not going to be happy with us. Our guys aren't going to be ready. Let's start this thing Thursday. Give us an extra day or two to kind of get our ducks in a row here and make this thing, let us follow our process. And they generally understand that. So, but
yeah, you're going to finish at the same time no matter what.
Exactly.
A lot of time.
Yeah, or faster even, right? So because you thought it out, you ordered what you needed to have on the job site, you got the right manpower out there that you needed. So
that's a hard discipline to have.
It
I
is.
mean, I think everybody would say it's the right. We have a process. We're going to do our process. But I mean, you wouldn't want them to like not cook the burger so you could get out of the drive-through faster. I mean,
Right.
it matters, but it's you got to have some real rigidity and strictness and discipline in your company to do that. I mean, kudos to you.
You do, and actually kudos to my people because they're the ones that have really seen the benefit of doing it. I'm probably the worst one. I'm one of those people that's like, yeah, let's go out there and get it done, and sometimes they have to reel me in and say, hey, no, wait a
Oh
second.
yeah, the owners are
Go
always
through our
the worst
process.
offenders. I mean,
Yeah.
as a business coach and as an owner, yes, we are the worst offenders.
We are. I am the absolute worst offender. It's like, come on, it's a small job. Let's just go out there and do it. No, we got to go through our process.
We do this all the time. It's no problem.
Exactly.
Sure, sure, it'll be a problem.
Yeah, so I really have to give kudos to my team because they are really really good about once they understand the value of a process or a system, they stick with it, and it's really nice to have that in your company. And
so I'm a process guy, and I always look for automation and triggers and stuff like that because that's just how I want to get. So when you have the contract's there, you've got the contract. Now it's time to do the handover. Does estimating initiate and say, "Hey, I've got one to get rid of. I got to give it to you," or does project management say, "I'm ready for you to give this to me"?
Yeah, it's project management. So yeah, because typically what happens, you get the contract comes in, and it normally goes to the project management team to start to dissect this contract. Yeah, we don't want to tie up the estimator going through contracts. They'll get the scope. We'll send them the scope portion. Hey, make sure the scope is what you estimated, and they'll review the scope. The project managers will review the rest of it, and then the project managers will kind of drive the process from there in terms of setting up the handoff meeting and starting to engage with the customer and figuring out the schedule and when things are going to happen or not happen, and working on some of those long lead time type items. So yeah. So and again, in terms of to answer your previous question in terms of timing, I would we typically try to our policies to is no less than 2 weeks before the project starts, but it might be if it's a significant project, it might be a month, maybe a month and a half. I don't think I would want to go out too much further than that on a handoff meeting because things just too much can change in that amount of time. So yeah, I think you want to give yourself at least 2 weeks to properly plan for a mobilization on a project. Again, it depends on the size of the project, but bigger projects are going to require a little more time. Smaller projects, like I said, we got one going off this week that we're handing off tomorrow. So
anything on your project checklist as you're going through all that kind of stuff, but one of your team members like, hey, we should add this to it, where you're just like, oh my gosh, why didn't we think of that before?
Yeah, in fact, it's funny. We just revisited our agenda. We have an agenda that we go through, and we just revisited it recently. And yeah, we modified it quite a bit. There are a lot of things that we added. I'm trying to think of some specifics. We have things on there, kind of the typical things. Do we need to call dig alert? Do we need to, do we need to get traffic control set up? We do. We have customer hot buttons on there. What's important to this customer? What do we need to know going in? What are
customer hot buttons. I like that term. Like, here's the thing, that's a great. I think that's the nugget right there. I mean,
yeah.
Hey, here's the key essential. This customer, here's 6 or 8 things it could be. Here are the top 2. Watch out.
Yeah, and that's so important. I can't emphasize that enough. And again, and it all goes back to that really getting to know the customer. I wish we had. It's so hard when you're dealing through a general contractor. It's really so hard to know who you're dealing with, and sometimes you don't find out until after the fact. And how many jobs have you been into where you get through, you're halfway through or a quarter of the way, or even maybe all the way through the project, and the customer is just tearing you apart. The end user's tearing you apart. And you're going, God, I wish I would have known this customer was going to be like this before we started the job, right? Exactly. I would have done things a lot differently. I would have bid things a lot differently. I would have prepared a lot differently. So
their second building is going to be way expensive. Because it's going to have to pay for the last half of this one.
Exactly. How many times have we been in that situation? So I think part of the art of what we do is trying to find those things out ahead of time, and it's not easy because like we talked about, when you're dealing with a general contractor, you're removed from the end user. You don't know, and it's hard to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I'm in this job for you. Can you tell me, is your customer a pain in the ass, or is he a reasonable guy?"
I mean, let's be honest, because they already know.
They do.
Know. And I tell you, we did find one thing that we could do. It always bothered me that when we would tell the general contractor something, and by the time it got to it's that game of telephone. By the time it got to the end user, you're like, hey, that is not at all. And it might not be intentional, I mean, not always, and sometimes it was. So we ended up taking in just something as simple as a Loom video, and we would just open and record a screencast, and I would walk through the quote, and I would tell them all the things that I want to do, and I'd say, send this video to the end user, because just so you know, I kept this video. So here are my promises and what these terms mean, and it will help you convey it. Because then it went from the estimator to the project executive, the project accountant, and so at least I'm not saying it resolved every solution, but at least everybody got the same story.
That's a great idea. Yeah, just tell that story up front and make sure everybody knows. And we have the technology. Why not do that kind of thing? I think that's great.
Yeah. Some stuff has gotten easiher.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, I really appreciate it. I'm jealous of your weather. Maybe not this week, but other weeks. And
come on out and enjoy it. Come on out here and enjoy it with us one of these times.
I don't know, man. That's right up there with the never agree to meet a concrete guy first thing in the morning, because it's really still late at night. I learned that one the hard way a couple of times.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no doubt about it. But I appreciate it. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I love the idea of that. Yeah, sending that information over. But the customer hot button, I think that's headed to my turnover sheet tomorrow.
Yep, customer hot button's a good one. Yep, and that's probably one of our most important ones. We spend a lot of time talking about it. So
it makes sense, and it could be something as silly as they are hell bent on uniforms, or vehicles with lettering, or hey, go do one at a Pepsi plant and show up with a Coke in your hand.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah,
it's a problem.
It is a problem. Yeah, and every job. We've done work at SeaWorld where you got to be really careful about how you treat the environment while you're down there. So don't make sure you're not throwing any trash on the ground, or things are kept clean. Everything.
What happens if you show up there with a fishing pole? I don't even know what.
Well, I'll tell you, Chad. I've got a horror story about a job we did down there, and the electrician's foreman accidentally ran over a pigeon.
Oh no!
That the SeaWorld people had been feeding the pigeons on the road, so it was there's some little responsibility on their part.
Culpability. We all had a little meat in this.
Yeah, but anyway, they wanted to kick the foreman off the job, and he was the only one that knew anything about the job. So so you got to, again, you're really important to know what your customers are all about, because running over a pigeon can get you thrown off a job. So
what kind of pigeon can even get run over? I mean, it doesn't have to be the laziest pigeon ever. I mean,
a fat lazy pigeon, exactly. And I don't think this guy was going very fast. So.
I don't know. No, I did. When I worked for my dad in a swimming pool business, and I was in college, and we came home, and he sent us to work on this person's house. I had never seen so many cats. There were cats everywhere. And so we worked the full day, and me and another guy, I mean, we didn't think anything of it. We just get in the truck, we crank the truck. It sounded funny. She's down 3 cats. I guess the engine was a warm place to lay. I don't know.
There you go.
Sometimes all you can do is apologize. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it's got 8 left. I don't know.
Those are the things. I mean, if you're doing residential work, those are the things that make a difference, that you relay to your crew. Maybe they have a dog, and you got to tell your crew, hey, make sure you close the gate when you leave. You don't want to be responsible for losing this person's dog. It's the little things, and the customer, well, you use that person's dog and you just made the worst enemy in the world. Good luck getting your money. So,
oh, you'll never get it back. I mean,
yeah.
You might as well just go ahead and not come back. It's like, unless you find that dog, we're not going back to that job.
Don't come back. Don't even ask for your retention. Just leave it with there. You're not going to get it. So,
yeah, no kidding. That's awesome, Jerry. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time. And I think I'm going to have to be checking in with you again on this one, man. I got to go implement my hot button and then come back and find the next one.
Anytime, Jeff. Anytime. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks for listening to This is Concrete. We look forward to you joining us next time. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.